Hello and welcome to My Personal Professional Life, the podcast that helps you build the life you want. We are your hosts,
Beth, Messich,
and Greggy, Amisial, two learning experts who are always navigating that space in between our personal and professional lives. Today, we're going to discuss intentionality. That's a big word, but that's what we're going to tackle today. We have scoured the world, or at least the internet, to find the most sourced questions around the word intentionality, namely,
so the top three are: what is intentionality and why is it important? How can I cultivate intentionality in my daily life, both professionally and personally? And then how do I set intentional habits?
We're going to discuss all the ins and outs of intentionality, and we're going to aim to offer you some actions that you can take immediately to start to build momentum towards the personal and professional life that you want to live. Be sure to listen all the way through for some extra details and our PPL CTAs, as we're affectionately calling them. Personal.
Are we?
I mean, I tried something. Personal, professional life, call to action is just a lot. PPLCTA, It's quicker than saying the whole thing.
Hashtag that, people.
Hashtag that. This episode is brought to you by your sponsors, our sponsors.
Beth, Messich, Coaching and Consulting.
And Activating You. Okay, so our very first question, most asked questions around intentionality.
Yeah.
Look, I can't even say
We
it.
can say it. We'll be.
If I
we'll
can
be
say it, maybe I can tell you what it is, right? What is intentionality and why is it important? And immediately when we started talking about that as a topic, it was important to us both because it's actually one of the pillars of both of our businesses. When we talk about it in Activating You, our word is activity, right? It's one of our four pillars. And the idea of activity is really about recognizing that we are doing all the time. We're moving, we're working, we're speaking, we're acting. And to do those things with intention is very different from just doing those things, right?
Yeah.
We've had a conversation in a prior episode around goal setting and saying that if you don't set goals, life is going to bring you somewhere. Is it going to bring you where you actually want to be? And having that intentionality makes a huge difference in adding value to the efforts that you put out in the world.
Yeah, for sure. So similar, the three pillars of my business are define purpose, create meaning, and initiate growth. And as we think about the coaching piece, I talk a lot about reflection, perspective, and intentionality. So, we were looking for an actual definition. A lot of them can sound a little clinical or maybe a little ecclesiastical, not what we were quite going for. But the one that we landed on, I think, is going to resonate and really resonated for us. And that is intentionality is choosing to make decisions and take actions based on what's important to you. And to Greggy's point, life can just pull you along if you are not being intentional about where you want to go. And, as a coach, the thing that a lot of times what I'm talking to people about is their careers. And very often they're looking for someone to tell them what's next, whether that's their company, whether that's their boss, whether that's me. And a lot of times people will find themselves years into their career stopping and looking around like, well, how did I get here? I didn't want to ever get here. Yeah. But they worked hard. It's not lack of work. It's not lack of focus. It was they got pulled on in the direction that their company was taking them, as opposed to being really clear about where they wanted to go. Yeah,
I think you can add that to so many things. I know the workspace is one of them, but I always go back into like personal life. I get to encounter people all the time who take health and fitness classes or courses, and when you ask them why they're taking them, what's their reason? When I can reset them in the beginning of the class and say, hey, you woke up this morning for a reason. What is that reason? Tap into that, because that reason can give you an extra reason to push right now. So it's finding those little mechanisms to allow yourself to get the most out of every moment, and intentionality is part of it. If I take that same definition you have and I shorten it, I would just to say it's almost like saying do it on purpose. Yeah, right?
For sure.
Live life on purpose, with purpose, and for a purpose, right? That's your t-shirt right there. Yeah. Live life, right, with that purpose in mind, and all of a sudden added value in every space that we have it, right? I want to make sure that if I can, as much as I can, as intentional as I can be, I'm adding value in all those spaces that are important to me, right?
Yeah, and I think, as you talk about purpose, Greggy, if we think about purpose as our internal compass, the thing that is, that helps us find our true north, once we know what that is, intention is going to help us get there. It's going to help us follow the direction that we actually want to go.
Right. I love that. You talk about it in coaching. I talk about it in being friends to people, right? And when I think about this idea of intentionality, I know for me in my career path, when I was getting clear about myself and maybe what I wanted to do, and maybe not like overarching for the rest of my life, right? But having purpose in the next 2 years of my career, 3 years of my career actually made a huge difference for me in how I wanted to go. At the end of the day, I do think that there is some value in figuring out what your purpose is, and that allows you to add intention to everything else, right? When I look at that word and how big it is, the definition that you gave also, it's choosing, right? And acting in alignment with your purpose. Right. So when you're choosing and acting in alignment with those things that are invaluable to you, right, all of a sudden, added value, but it makes those things easier to do, adds value in the spaces that you think about them, adds energy to those things. So it's multifaceted when you think about the word.
Well, and I think about this in relation to a conversation you and I were just having sort of on a broader topic, but also some conversations I've had very specifically with individuals in my life recently. And so we were talking about, this idea of so many people have resigned their jobs. There was the whole Great Resignation. And yet so many people are also talking about, oh my gosh, there were layoffs. I don't want to lose my job. And there's a lot behind that, right? Like, so let's be clear, there's a lot behind that. But it's really interesting when people are talking about like, I might lose a job I don't actually want.
Or like.
And so one of the things that, I think can be really helpful. And by the way, I don't say that to say that flippantly, because we all I need a job to pay for my life. Yeah. Right. But I think being really clear on what your intention is around your job, I think we make a choice. I was at a company for a long time, and there was a period of time where I kind of got a little sick of myself because I realized anytime I was describing work,
I'm sick of me.
Right? Like anytime I was talking about work, I was using the word frustrated. Like the word frustrated was coming up all the time. And I'm like, well, then what am I if I'm this frustrated, what am I doing? And so it really helped me realign, like, why am I here? I am choosing to be here. If I'm choosing to be here, I don't get to be frustrated anymore. So what's the intention in me staying here? And that really helped me to determine why I wanted to stay. And when I decided to leave, it helped me to determine why I wanted to leave.
Yeah, I love that. As you were saying, and I know in our pre-production, we kind of talk about what directions we want to go. But
in the green room.
Yeah, exactly.
That's his kitchen.
You know what that made me think about? And this is like, I don't want to go too deep in there, but it made me think about relationships. Right? I have a friend who I've talked to that friend about their relationship. And, we all have those friends who call us and they'll complain about their significant other or something like that. And I think about those things and like, hey, are both of your intentions in the same place? Yeah. And if they're not, all of a sudden that gives you some information around whether or not maybe those two people should be together. Like there's so many things that when there's intention behind intention, when you think about those things, right, all of a sudden it can give you added energy, added purpose, and all those things. And I thought that being a part of the pillars of both of our business is important for us to kind of discuss and talk about. Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like everyone else wants to talk about it too, because it's the most asked question around intentionality on the interwebs.
Yes.
Right. So that brings us to our second question. What was that?
All right. So question number 2. How can I cultivate intentionality in my daily life, both personal and professional? What do you got?
That sounds really deep when you think about it. That's a big question. How can I cultivate this intentionality? And I think, we kind of touched on it in some of the spots before, but the clearer I get with what I want to get out of life, what I want to get out of a relationship, what I want to get out of specific situations, if I take it down even to what do I want to get out of the day, right, will allow me to make sure I can have more intentionality throughout. So if I'm looking at daily life, it's bringing it down to those lower points of saying, hey, where's the success in this week or this day? And if I can be clear on what that is, it allows me to get forward. The question I continue to ask myself when we talk about habits and activating your best self is, does this habit serve me, right? Is it serving the best version of myself, or is it taking away from that, right? If it's serving me, or is it hindering me? If I'm clear about whether it's serving me, those same intentions can be placed around the things that we do today. If my goal is to, complete a writing assignment I have, complete a blog post today, then is Instagram serving me right now? Or is it not? And sometimes it is, because I want content, I want to look for it. Sure. Or it's giving me giving me an escape. But if it's not, I need to know that, hey, right now this isn't it, and I can add that intention to it. So that's one of the ways you can do it for sure.
Yeah, and I think when we think about intentionality, it's about shifting our focus internally. Intention isn't something you do sort of out here. It's not activity.
Okay.
It's a lot more internal. And I think the thing that's really helpful is pay attention to where you are putting your attention. Because a lot of times our attention is going to get pulled to something, even if we're trying to do something that we should do, air quotes should do. If our attention is getting pulled somewhere else, that's telling us something.
Right.
I think the other piece is, if we want to be intentional about something, we have to put our attention to it. So again, if you want to do your writing assignment, Instagram may not be serving you in that moment. Right. ChatGPT might serve you in that moment, right? To do a little research,
right.
But Instagram may not be serving you. So a lot of this work is internal and really getting clear with yourself.
Yeah, I think that's why it's hard. Life moves so fast. Things are going on, happening. There are so many things that are pulling us away from it. We had one of our conversations when we were talking about this topic. We wanted to be really clear, even with ourselves. It wasn't necessarily about being present.
No.
Presence is another conversation. Intentionality maybe jumps in a little bit earlier than that and saying, hey, where do I need to place my energy? Because if I place my energy in this spot, all of a sudden, it might allow me to be present because it's easier to do because I'm clear about what I'm trying to do. But that work takes time. It takes time to stop, pause, think through things before you do them. And that sometimes is something that we're harder to do. We can be up in our heads all day.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to getting ready to be add intention to our work, sometimes that's tougher to do. So it's that pausing and being able to reflect.
I agree. And I think there's also something to then naming it. So as we're reflecting and as we're saying like, oh, I'm getting pulled here, I'm getting pulled there, or I'm doing this and I'm really finding myself in a state of flow or whatever the case may be, being able to name that, there's this idea of, I hear it a lot around anxiety, the idea of like name it, tame it, right? Okay. So if something's causing you anxiety, like actually just calling it anxiety and being like, that's what this is.
Yeah.
Then you have a way of understanding it and moving through it. I think intentionality is the same thing. This idea of I'm feeling my attention going somewhere. That's because I'm interested in it. That's because I'm trying to get away from this thing. That's because there's all sorts of noise telling me I should be putting my attention there. It's I really wish we had the like add water and stir answers to these things. If we did, you wouldn't be hearing us now. We'd just be sitting on our big piles of gold. But I do think teasing some of these things apart and creating a little time and space for yourself to do that is important.
Yeah, I think I love that you bring it up that way. I think one thing that I want to add to it now as I'm thinking about is there are like the question was, how can I cultivate that, right? Some of that in an operational way, I think one of the great things you could do is one, it's hindsighting. I always try to think was today a success? Was it not? What would have made it so? I started journaling and we had an interview on Activating You's Instagram. A good friend of mine, Vander Thompson, he started talking about this 5-minute journaling that he does in the morning. It's being grateful to start the day. And then at the end of the day, going back to that list and saying, hey, what would have made today great? And did I win or lose on that? Yeah. One of the coaching questions that we use or talk about is like what worked, where you might get stuck, and maybe what could you do differently next time? I try to have those conversations with my family, my wife, all the time to kind of get a sense of like how we're moving along. And if I have those answers to those questions, it gives me a space to be additionally intentional in those spaces. So hindsighting, using some mechanism like coaching questions like that to help you, I think could be a way to do it.
Absolutely. So our third and final question for the day.
Third and final question.
How do I set intentional habits?
I love that you talk about habits, and that is a question that was asked most by people in this space. For us at Activating You, we talk about habits as being like the root of things that you think about. And the reason why I had such huge impact by reading, it's right here, actually, this book right here, The Power of Habits. The reason why is there's such power in habits. It's so strong, the way habits form in your brain. If you can take advantage of that power, you can set steps to building momentum towards the space you want to go. Right? It's just really being clear about understanding how that mechanism works, and you can use it to your advantage. And the more you can do that, the better off you are. When it comes to setting habits with intention, I think it's thinking about those two things in that space. One is understanding the power of a habit. Two, if I'm intentional around the habit, all of a sudden I'm now really gearing myself towards a space. I want to lose a certain amount of weight. Well, what habit can I form along the path of that? Does that habit serve my purpose. So it's about having habits that serve the purpose of where you're trying to go. Earlier I said it's about living life, right? On purpose, with purpose, for purpose. That's the same thing. If I set a habit on purpose, right? If I say these actions I'm going to complete on purpose, right? With this purpose and for this purpose in mind, I give myself a space to go ahead and do that.
Yeah. I think the other piece around this is having one of your habits actually be about self-reflection. So part of it is setting the habits, but it's having those sort of halo or parallel habits that actually reinforce the other habits that you have. So, self-reflection, it's actually something on my Instagram, on Beth Messich Coaching. Every Tuesday, I do a different self-reflection question for the week. This quarter, it's around my first pillar of defining purpose. And it really, the intention, see what I did there?
I see.
The intention is to help people pull to these questions that, you can think about when you're in the shower, or where I seem to do my best thinking, or taking a walk, or cooking dinner, or whatever, because creating that habit of actually looking internally, actually understanding where your attention is, where you're putting your attention, that in and of itself is going to help you as you think about what other habits do you want to put in place to help you be more intentional.
I love that. For us, this is sort of twofold. It's calling back gratitude as an opportunity.
For sure.
Gratitude helps you be present. So that's one, but also allows you to go back to a space of your intention. The things you can say you're thankful for allows you to say, hey, where am I? Am I in that space where I'm serving my greater purpose? Am I in a space where my intention is matching my action? And are the things around me supporting those places that I want to be? And I think that's super important.
Yeah, research actually shows that self-awareness and gratitude are two of the most important behaviors to support intentionality.
All right. So my favorite part of our segments, and yours maybe too, is the call to action. I'm trying to affectionately name it our PPL CTA.
Yeah, certainly send in comments and let us know how you feel about that.
Personal, professional, life call to action, whatever.
Yeah,
Doesn't
whatever.
work. Doesn't matter.
It's fine.
If you do have a suggestion for what we could call it, we'll take it. I like suggestions there.
Yeah. Okay, great.
But yes, this is our chance to do that now.
Yeah.
Give you some things that you can walk away with, that you can put in action immediately to get closer to that person that you want to be, build the life you want to live.
Yeah.
Okay. So my call to action, am I first?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
It's like a dance. We're trying to figure out who steps where. You know what I mean?
We want to have a little bit of a plan, but keep it spontaneous.
Yeah.
Not sure how that's working, but go on.
No, actually, no. I'm going to go ladies first on this one. I think you got it.
Okay. So I would say my call to action, it's very much tied to the last question that we were talking about.
Yep.
I would say build in a practice of reflection. And don't think about that as being hugely daunting. It doesn't have to be. I mean, Greggy was talking about journaling earlier.
Yep.
Journaling is a form of reflection.
There you go.
Right? So there's not a right or wrong way to do it. I think it's when we're not doing it at all that we're sort of at a disadvantage. So build in a practice of self-reflection.
Okay.
What about you?
So this is perfect that I'm going to get to tag onto yours in this way.
Okay.
All right. If I'm building a path right now, I want to be really specific about that. Sort of like what we talked about in a past conversation around goal setting. Write it down. Get a calendar and write down days where you could be reflective. Do you want to do it daily? Is it something that you could do? It might be a lot to say every day I'm going to reflect. Maybe it's a weekly thing that you could build in, and try this week to do it one time, to sit with yourself and ask yourself 3 simple questions. What's working for me, right? Are the things that I did serving me, or are they taken away? Where am I having a hard time? So the second question is, where am I getting stuck? And then finally, after you're ending with those 2 reflections, right? Where your successes were, your failures were, the next thought for you then is to look at and say, hey, going forward, what can I do? Change, stay the same, whatever it is. What can I do going forward? Those 3 questions have been a godsend to me.
Yep.
It's something that I aim to do every year, at least once a year with my wife. It was something that we started our first year anniversary. We actually sat there and had this conversation and said, hey, what's working? And we let each other go. Where are we getting stuck? We let each other go. And then talked about what we could contract to commit to going forward. That was us building a path towards reflection. And I would, venture to say it's been a part of how we've been able to have some success over the last 5 years of marriage, right? So it's just one of those things that I think is important. Write it down. Choose a number, and then in that number, you can write down those 3 questions. Set an alarm in your phone. Write those 3 questions in there and give yourself a chance to have something that'll call you back to making you have an opportunity to reflect.
Yeah, and I do. It's funny. Greggy and I have worked. We worked at the same place for a long time, and then a chunk of that time we worked together or worked on the same broader team, and at one point on the same exact team.
Yep.
And it's funny. Those three questions are ones. We're both learning and development professionals. We have been talking to people about quite literally for years, like years and years, as part of how you give feedback, about how you ask for feedback, about how you reflect. And the beauty of them is that they are open-ended and so simple. So I love that we can apply them here.
Apply them here. The simplicity of them work. Anytime, like if you think about your job, anytime your boss is coming in to check with you, that's what they're asking. Use that same mechanism for yourself, right? You are your own boss in the business of you, and that'll allow you to stay as intentional as possible as finding those moments for reflection, right? Yeah. Sound good?
Yeah, and that is episode 2.
That is it. Look at that. We're done 2 down. That felt really good. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I know we did.
Yeah. Okay. So just a quick recap. So our focus today, or our topic today, was intentionality. We talked about what is intentionality and why is it important. Hopefully we gave you the business case for that. How we talked about some ways to cultivate it in your daily life, and then how to set intentional habits. So again, we both really enjoyed this. We would love to hear from you. So feel free to reach out to us. Greggy, where can they find you?
You can find me on the Instas. You know where we at. Activating You on Instagram. You can also check me out at Greggy for Real Cycle. You can DM me on either one of those spaces. Beth, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Beth Messich Coaching. And if you're on LinkedIn, you can find me at Beth Messich Coaching and Consulting. And we would ask, if you like what you're hearing, share it with a friend.
Yeah.
We would love to hear from you. DM us, but also feel free to pass this on to others. We would love to expand the personal, professional life community.
Here, this is what they say on the socials. They say, like, comment, subscribe, share. There you go. So at some point, do those things.
Do all those things.
Yeah, do all those things. Like it, comment, let us know, share it with somebody else. All those things. So we'd appreciate that if you do it. Thanks for that. And let us know what you want to hear from us in the future. We're planning on doing more of these, so we're excited about that.
We're looking forward to talking to you next time.
All good. Peace.
Bye.